Hey everybody, Anthony here, FSU Off-Road. Welcome back to another video. If it's your first time joining us, I just want to welcome you to the channel and welcome you to our 4800 build, known as Tinkerita. A lot's happened in previous videos throughout the whole year with our 4800 build, known as Tinkerita, and we are in the final stages of getting things together. But before we get started into that, I have to talk to you about a few important things. 1, KOH. 2, this channel. And 3, what's coming up. Now, as you may or may not know, King of Hammers is only about 3 weeks away. And as you see, the car is just not there. So I come with you, I come to all of you with a heavy heart saying that I withdrew my registration for King of Hammers for 2023. And just a lot of factors involved with it. You know, just time, money, help, just supply demands. It's a lot. And coming from the East Coast to the West Coast, it'd be different if we were like 4 or 6 hours away. But being 36, 40 hours away, getting there with hauling trailers and things like that, it's a logistical nightmare. Been there, done that. And I really don't feel like going 40 hours or driving 40 hours to test an untested vehicle. And that was part of my stipulations. So we withdrew registration from that, but that doesn't deter us or steer us away from racing this season, because you can still race for national points and for Eastern Series points, which is exactly what we're going to do starting in April. With all that being said, the channel has reached 1,000 subscribers. It's been a long time coming, but I just want to thank each and every one of you for subscribing, sticking around, watching the builds. And as far as the channel goes, we're not going anywhere. I'm just a small channel. I don't make any money off YouTube. I just enjoy documenting the progress and processes of these builds. And if the channel grows, it grows. If it doesn't, I'm not gonna be mad, because I just enjoy the process. And I enjoy bringing content to you guys, because I'm just like you. I work a 40 hours a week, normal job. I'm just a hobbyist by trade, doing this stuff. I mean, this is just what I enjoy doing. So yeah, I just want to thank each and every one of you for subscribing. And yeah, it's been a fun journey trying to figure out this YouTube thing. Now, diving back into Tinkerita here, for King of Hammers, like I said, we withdrew our registration. But with that being said, we are officially car number 801. So it's not exactly what I had planned, but I like it. It's a 3-digit number, and it kind of flows with our original 4600 car. So this is a 4800 car, so we just dropped the 4, so being an 800 car. And then Tinker, our first original race Jeep, was 4601, and we just wanted to keep the 01 series going. So obviously that's how we came up with 801. So we're going to be getting everything decked out and getting number plates and all that stuff ordered with the 801. So if you are looking for us out on the race course in future races, not King of Hammers, but future races, first of all, you're not going to miss us. But second of all, that's our registration number, 801, moving forward in Ultra 4 racing. Now today, we're diving deep and going over what has happened over the past few weeks as we've worked on Tinkerita, getting it ready, and specifically for this video, getting our third members and axles installed. That way we can get things ready for Ultra 4 racing this year. I just wanted to do a quick update of everything that we've been doing since I haven't recorded, since the motor's cranked in the last video. But in the last video, obviously we got the motor running, and since then we went through and just about got everything completely ready here on the chassis. Wiring is completely done. We're about 98% done. I just got to do a couple of trigger wires here. One's going to go to the brake switch there, and then one's going to be for our siren. But aside from that, all the wiring is done. Everything is nice and tidy and ran. Panels are starting to get put back in, as well as exterior panels, making sure that they're all where they should be. Started routing coolant lines from the front to the rear of the chassis. Also serpentine belt, got that figured out. And then once I get that stuff done, we'll be able to put our intake and winch and stuff back up in here. I did redo the front grille here and got it all installed with the front bumper, and out back, you know, it's completely finished up. The only thing that we have to do is build our mount for our cooler back here, but everything else is put back to where it's going to be. So for the front, this is our Gearworks 10-inch ring gear, ring pinion from Gearworks. And what we had to run with, or what we had to go with as far as gear ratios, we were going with a 513 gear. Originally I was going to run 543s, but 543 gears are so hard to find in a high opinion. With a 10-inch ring gear, 513s, easily accessible. Was able to knock those out and get that stuff on order, which is why I went with that. But anyways, this third member, we completely built it here, got all of our stuff, all the backlashing, pinion depths, all that set, ideal placement and pattern for the ring gears themselves. So now it's time to get it snuck up underneath here in our custom axle. All right, I got the third member installed here, and I've got the axle flexed up almost all the way. But as you can see, there's still, let me get a light over there. There's still a little bit of a bump stop showing, and what that represents is I need another inch of up travel. And instead of limiting up travel, I need to figure out how to get it. The problem is this upper link right here is contacting ever so slightly this bolt right here. This upper link is hitting the bolt. So I'm thinking what I might do is I might actually take this bolt out, all these bolts out, and replace them with Allen bolts and see if I have enough clearance. I don't know, but drive shaft, I should have clearance for the drive shafts coming down through here back to our carrier bearing down here, but that's a big problem. And honestly, I thought it was going to be the pinion hitting, but I mean, we got tons of clearance right there. I could stick my whole hand through it. So that's not the problem. The problem is the actual housing. So we're going to have to fix that. As far as where the bolt interferes with this upper link, I have some ideas with that. I probably end up going to take this pinion support out and probably mill this down a little bit. That way I can get a little bit more clearance out of it. I think that'd probably be the best way. And then after doing some measurements with my angle finder here, the axle is actually not 90 completely at ride height. So I will have to make some adjustments. So what I'll do is I'll probably bring it back up to full bump, and then probably just adjust these upper arms to where I have just enough clearance there. It kind of sucks, but it's part of it, especially when you don't have this stuff whenever you're building it. But we'll come up with a solution there. Not a big deal. Now, today, what I want to do is I want to tackle these front axle shafts and everything. So I've got to take the brake rotors out and then take the unit bearings out. And then what we can do is we can get our axle shafts in, torque down these knuckles, get everything torqued to spec where they need to be. That way we can finish up this front axle and it'll be completely built. Now that I've got the axle torn apart, got the brakes, unit bearing, all that out, I wanted to go over what we're going to be filling this axle tube with. And what I have here is a 40 spline inner and outer axle shaft. This is a 40 spline stub shaft for the 05 and up Super Duty unit bearings, obviously because that's what we're using. And then what we have in the center there is a Brannick Motorsport chromoly U-joint, and then a solid 40 spline axle shaft for the interior portion. And basically we're going to be fitting this up in our axle housing here, and then putting just a seal on the backside, keep dirt and debris out of it. And then once we get it all assembled, the final component is going to be our East Coast gear supply 40 spline slugs, and we're going to be utilizing them on all four corners as well for this build. Well, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty bummed right now because I made a critical error in my measurements for this axle shaft with these slugs. Yeah, it's a bummer, but anyways, my interior shafts are too long by roughly 1 3/4 inches, because that's what the length from here to here is, because I measured to the edge of the unit bearing cup, which means all of my axle shafts are going to be wrong, and I just got them. So I'm going to have to send them back out and get them fixed. But regardless, I guess I'll just take the axle shaft back out, put the unit bearing back in, and I don't know, I'll work on something else. Yeah. Okay, new day, new mindset. Yes, not going to be able to do anything with these axle shafts. Sucks. It's really bummed about it, but there's still plenty to be done on the chassis here. So it's kind of going to mix up this video. I'm not really sure what we're going to do, but I know the one thing that I do want to do, and that is work on our front drive shaft. Also, I remembered why this doesn't work. So these are a deep dish cup, and I did all my measurements with a flat cup. And on these deep dish cups, how they sit in there, there's actually some little spacers, and those spacers take up the 1/4 inch difference, or roughly it's like 3/16 of the difference. And that's why I'm bottoming out on the shock versus bottoming out on the bump stop, which I'm glad we found that out now versus damaging our shocks or coilovers in the future. So you live and you learn. Mistakes were definitely made, but regardless, I'm going to work on this today, and hopefully we can knock this out. And just like that, things are looking up. I went ahead and dropped the axle to roughly ride height, which gave me about 8 3/4 inch up travel, which is exactly what I want, at least on the shock itself. You get a little bit more over 9 inches with the actual axle travel itself, just because of the placement and the angle. However, the big thing was the pinion angle. Actually, at ride height, the pinion angle was tilted up just a little bit. It was about 88, or yeah, about 88 degrees. So I was able to tilt it down to get it super close to 90, and by doing that, we've got the clearance that we need up here. There's about 1/4 inch. It's really hard to tell. That's almost 1/4 inch of space there. Now, I could easily fill that up by putting a bolt and stuff in there, but I think what I'm going to do is I still want to take that out, mill it down just a little bit. That way I make sure I have space just in case. I'd rather have more space than not enough. Got another fun-filled day here in the garage. I haven't recorded much this week, but I do have some good updates. One, we're going to start down here with the drivetrain. Over the past week, I really dialed in our carrier bearing, pinion angles for U-joints, making sure that nothing was going to bind, and making sure we had enough clearance for the drive shaft. Now, it don't look like it, but there's roughly an 1/8 inch gap on the back side of here. It's super close. I mean, it is very, very, very tight, but the drive shaft does have clearance that it needs, and we are at full stuff. So that's going to be the worst case scenario, and everything lines up beautifully. And yes, we also built a drive shaft. And the best way to build a drive shaft, obviously at a place that builds drive shafts, but if you're in a pinch and you don't have that capability, use an angle finder, specifically a digital angle finder. Put it on your shaft, put it on the splines, get it symmetrical as much as possible. That'll get you a good starting point. You can break out dial indicators and all that stuff if you want to as well, but for quickness and easiness, that's what we did here. I do plan on having drive shafts made by a local shop, but we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. Next thing on the list that we've taken care of is up here with the engine bay. Got our AccuSet pump mounted, serpentine belt. I got our water lines kind of started. Power steering with the PSC components are all torqued down to spec. Everything is good to go there. So have all this knocked out now. And then kind of briefly touched on it, the water lines. Started running them from that chassis. Again, full bump, super close to the water housing, but I think every buggy, race car, things like that, it's always really tight. But we're going to use silicone lines and just kind of get it ran and have it ran here and then back to the back of the chassis there. Still working on the return, but I'm hoping that I'll run it down through there, kick it back, and then I'm thinking I'm going to change up these headers just for a different brand. It'll hug the block a little bit better, give me a little bit more clearance. That way I shouldn't have to worry about that, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Today I want to finish up getting the mid shaft done on the carrier bearing, and I went to the store today, bought some hose clamps, and I'm going to start hose clamping this stuff down. That way it's permanently in place, and I also want to add some secure anchor points on the chassis for these water lines, instead of them being these little poly bushings. Some places I can't put those poly bushings, so I want to use some actual some type of metal thing to hold it there. So well, we just finished the first part of this, and that is getting our water lines and stuff ran. And let me just show you just a closer routing of everything that we did. Now, as you see, we went ahead and ran our vent lines to a little piece here. And then all this stuff is just 1.5 inch. These are all just silicone 4-ply silicone elbows. And what I did was I routed from the exit of the water pump up and then down the back of the chassis. As you can see, it gets close here, but I haven't put our anchor points in yet. I'm gonna build some custom anchor points that come off this tube right here, as well as up here and right here. Now for the water supply, obviously that runs through the back of the chassis and runs through to the radiator. Now for the supply, it does the same thing. It runs up from the outside here because it's about the only place you can get it to fit. Runs up here. I'm gonna put another anchor point right here where it'll hold this nice and secure. That way that won't rub or anything like that. And then it just goes in to the inlet, which is super close to the upper link, as you can see there, but there is a gap, and this is at full bump, so we shouldn't have any issues there. Down here where the actual mid shaft is going to go in the chassis here, obviously we've already built our front drive shaft, and the mid shaft is going to be super short. From anchor point to anchor point is 10 inches, and as you can see, this is our spline portion, and on our actual slip yoke itself, it's a little too long as well. And instead of ordering a bunch of different ones, I'm going to cut the one that I have, shorten it 1.5 inches. That way I can put the dust cap back on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cut the spline according to the length that I need and the slip that I need. And then we're going to put the end yoke on, get it all tack welded together, and make sure it's going to fit inside the little mid shaft area to our transfer case. The angles and everything work out perfect, but the main reason why I'm doing this is that way I have like 4 of these for spare shafts, everything like that. I just want to keep everything congruent, everything the same, so if I have one custom one, I know how I did it. I can do it again in the future because I have other ones on the shelf. So let's get to chopping. As you can see, what we're doing here, we just made us a little stubby shaft, just with a yoke. Basically, we got 1 inches here because they engage about a 1/2 inch on both sides. We trimmed that down as best we could to make a little bit more room. This is going to have plenty of room for the slip yoke, which we also cut down. And then my plan on the slip yoke here is to cut the backside cap off, align it on the backside here, bevel both sides, get it aligned as best I can, and weld it to it. That way I'll still have my dust shield, can fit over the spline shaft there, and then this shaft here should allow us to have our mid shaft out of parts that we have here, which means I could also duplicate this in the future. Okay, well, after a lot of cutting, grinding, tack welding, you know, you gotta tack weld. Anyways, we got our mid shaft all done, and let me bring you in here and show you what it looks like. Now it's a little tight back here, but you can see there's just enough slip up here. There's just enough slip in here that way I can get the mid shaft in, and it compresses to about 9.5 inches, and we need 10 inches overall, so it works out perfect. There's no binding, everything looks good, rotates as it should, and yeah, just throw some tack welds in there because I wanted to verify that everything was going to fit first and foremost. But it's in there, it's going to work. So the last thing that I'll have to do is just finish up welding the drive shafts, but I'll do that whenever I finish the rear. But I'm not going to conclude that. I'm not going to put that in this video. I'll worry about that in a future video. But I think that's going to conclude this video. I know that this one's kind of all over the place. Mistakes were made, and we're not making it to King of Hammers. But I know there's going to be a lot of people out there at King of Hammers. A lot of people that I know, even some that I've helped out. And I wish all you guys the best of luck out there in the upcoming weeks of racing, and you know, go get them. As for us, we're going to keep we're going to keep at it here, working on Tinkerita, trying to get it ready for the race season. This thing is going to hit the tracks this year, and we're going to do our best to make it in April, which will be the first race in the Eastern Series for Ultra 4 racing. So if you get an opportunity, head up to Kentucky. We're hopefully going to be debuting this car there because there's not much left to go. A couple good hard weekends, a couple extra hands, and we'll be able to drive this thing out of the garage. But enough chit-chatting. I hope you guys like what you saw. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure you hit the thumbs up. Again, everybody that's racing King of Hammers, be super safe. Have a great time. And the best of luck to each of you, especially all the guys from North Carolina. Go show them what the East Coast guys have to offer. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one.